There are people on this earth who have been gifted with extraordinary wisdom and knowledge. They are able to perceive the world in ways that most cannot. Among these mysterious figures is Khidr, a figure shrouded in legends. His true nature and purpose remains veiled in secrecy. Countless stories and tales surround him, yet the full truth has been hidden from us. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ once remarked, "Had Musa remained patient, we would have learned more about Khidr." In this concluding part of the story of Musa, let us dive into the mysterious tale, where divine wisdom, patience, and the realization that nothing is as it seems. Musa stood before his congregation. His voice was firm and steady. The people sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the Prophet, eager to absorb his wisdom. As he finished his sermon, a man from the crowd stood up, his face curious and respectful. "O Musa," the man called out, "who is the most knowledgeable person amongst the people?" Musa, confident in his role as the Prophet, did not hesitate. He knew that Allah had sent him to guide the people, to interpret the scripture, and to lead them on the path of righteousness. His connection to Allah was undeniable. "I am the most knowledgeable of the people," Musa responded. But as the words left his lips, a revelation descended upon him. Allah revealed that there was a servant of his who walks this earth, a man who has been given knowledge not through work or learning, but directly from Allah. Musa, having received this revelation, stood in awe. His heart, once filled with certainty and his unique status as the most knowledgeable, was now stirred with both curiosity and humility. And now Allah had instructed Musa to seek out this individual. Musa was told to take a basket and place in it a small dead fish. He was to travel along the shores of the sea and was to continue walking until the fish jumped from the basket and returned to the water. This was the sign for Musa that he had reached the place where the servant of Allah could be found. Allah elaborated further, telling Musa that this place would be in an area where the two seas met. Before setting off on the journey to find the mysterious servant of Allah, Musa made careful arrangements for his departure. He knew that he would be leaving his people for an unknown period of time, and so he entrusted the leadership of his community to his brother Harun. With his people in Harun's care, Musa turned to his young apprentice, Yusha bin Nun, or Joshua, who had been chosen to accompany him. Joshua had long been at Musa's side, learning from him and aiding him in his duties as a prophet. He was strong in both body and faith and a loyal companion. And so, the two set out, leaving behind their people and the familiar comforts of their land. As they travelled, the days stretched on, the sea ever in sight beside them. The sun rose and set, the stars marking the passage of time as they journeyed onward. One evening, after a long day of travel, Musa and Joshua decided to rest by a large rock near the shore. Musa leaned against the rock, tired, yet focused on the task at hand. Joshua placed the basket containing the fish nearby. The night was calm, and as they rested, something extraordinary happened. The small fish, lifeless in the basket, suddenly began to stir. The fish leaped out of the basket, its scales glistening in the moonlight. With a graceful arc, it plunged into the water and swam away, as if it had never been dead at all. Joshua noticed the movement in the basket just as it happened, his eyes widening in surprise. He watched as the fish disappeared into the sea, the realization dawning on him that this was the sign Allah had promised them. For a moment, Joshua was unsure whether to wake Musa, but exhaustion overtook him and he too drifted off to sleep without saying a word. The next morning, Musa awoke, refreshed and ready to continue. Joshua, having witnessed the miraculous return of the fish to the water, had forgotten to mention it to Musa, and so they pressed on. The days stretched on and their provisions began to dwindle. One afternoon, after walking for several hours, Musa's hunger got the better of him. He turned to Joshua, his voice weary from travel. "Bring us the food we carried with us," Musa said. As soon as Musa mentioned the food, his eyes widened as he recalled the event from days earlier. Joshua quickly spoke up. "Musa, I forgot. When we rested by the rock, the fish we were carrying came back to life. It leaped from the basket and swam into the sea." "That was the place," Musa exclaimed. "That is where we are to meet this servant of Allah. We must return there immediately." Without delay, Musa and Joshua retraced their steps, hurrying back along the path they had traveled. The anticipation of what awaited them filled Musa with renewed energy. As they arrived, Musa and Joshua saw a figure sitting quietly on a rock, gazing out over the water. The man appeared humble, his face calm and peaceful. He seemed to be waiting, as if he had known they would come. Musa knew with certainty that this was the servant of Allah whom he had been sent to find. He approached him carefully, feeling both humility and anticipation. Joshua stayed back, allowing Musa to speak directly to the mysterious figure. "Peace be upon you, I am Musa." The man, known as Khidr, turned to Musa with a gentle gaze. He nodded slightly, acknowledging Musa's greeting. Khidr, his expression unchanged, responded with a question that startled Musa. "Are you Musa from the children of Israel?" Khidr asked. Musa was taken back. He hadn't expected Khidr to know who he was. "Yes, I am Musa, the one sent by Allah to guide the children of Israel." Khidr looked at Musa and without any sign of excitement or interest asked bluntly, "What do you want from me?" Musa explained, "Allah has revealed to me that you possess a knowledge that I do not. He has commanded me to seek you so that I may learn from you. I wish to spend time with you and benefit from the wisdom Allah has given you." Khidr listened and then replied, "You, Musa, are indeed a prophet of Allah, blessed with wisdom and revelation, but the knowledge you seek from me is different. It is knowledge that you may not fully understand, nor will you find it easy to bear." Musa said, "By Allah's will, I will be patient. I will not question you. I only seek to learn." Khidr looked at Musa carefully, as though weighing his words. After a little while, Khidr finally spoke. "You may follow me, but you must not ask me anything that I do until I myself explain it to you. If you cannot bear this, then you will not be able to stay with me." Musa, determined and sincere, agreed. "I promise, I will not question you." And so, their journey together began. Khidr rose from his seat on the rock, and the two of them set out on a path that led them deeper into the unknown. As they walked, the landscape shifted from the open sea to a village by the shore. The people there were busy with their daily lives. Khidr led Musa to the docks, where they found a small boat tethered to the shore. The owner of the boat, recognizing Khidr, greeted them warmly and offered them passage across the waters without asking for payment. Once aboard the boat, they sailed quietly across the sea, the sun beginning to sink lower in the sky. Musa observed in silence, keeping his promise not to question anything. Suddenly, a small bird fluttered down from the sky and landed softly on the edge of the boat. Musa watched as the bird, with no care for the world around it, dipped its beak into the ocean, taking a tiny droplet of water. The droplet was so small that it barely left a ripple on the surface of the vast sea. Khidr, observing this moment, turned to Musa and broke his silence. "Did you see that?" he asked. Musa, his attention now fully on the bird, replied, "Yes, I saw it." That droplet the bird took from the sea, Khidr said, represents the knowledge that you and I possess combined, and the ocean represents the knowledge of Allah. Musa's eyes widened as the meaning of Khidr's words sank in. The vastness of the ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see, was like the limitless knowledge of Allah, incomprehensible and boundless. In comparison, the knowledge possessed by even the greatest of men, whether prophets or the wisest of scholars, was no more than a single droplet. Khidr, meanwhile, remained as composed as ever, allowing the silence to deepen the weight of his words. As the boat sailed on, Khidr suddenly stood up and made his way to the back of the boat, and without hesitation began pulling away the wooden planks, damaging the boat from within. Musa was in shock. He was just absorbing in the wisdom of what had just happened, and now he was presented with Khidr behaving in an almost reckless way. Without thinking, Musa spoke out. "Why are you doing this? You are damaging the boat of the people who have been kind to us. Do you wish to drown us and them?" Khidr turned to Musa, his face calm, though there was a hint of disappointment. "Did I not say that you would not be able to bear with me patiently?" Musa immediately regretted his outburst. "Forgive me," he said. "I forgot my promise. I will not question you again." Khidr said nothing further, and they continued their journey. After some time, they came ashore and began walking towards a nearby village. As they entered the village, they came across a group of children playing. Suddenly, Khidr approached one of the boys, and to Musa's horror, he struck the child, ending his life in an instant. Musa gasped, unable to contain his disbelief. "How could you do such a thing?" he said, his voice trembling with shock. "You have killed an innocent soul without any reason. This is a grievous act." Khidr simply looked at him. "Did I not tell you that you would not be able to bear with me?" Musa lowered his head, ashamed of his outburst. "If I question you again," Musa said, "then you may part ways with me, for I will have proven myself unworthy of your company." Khidr nodded, and they continued on their way. Musa, struggling with the strange and seemingly unjust actions he had witnessed, reminded himself that there was a wisdom beyond what he could immediately understand. As Musa and Khidr continued their journey, they eventually reached a village. They were tired and hungry. Musa looked around the village, expecting the people to welcome them, or at the very least, offer a small meal. But instead, they were met with coldness and hostility. The villagers ignored them, turning their backs, refusing to help. No one came forward to offer even a morsel of food. Musa found this behavior strange. In the culture of that time, it was customary to offer help to travelers. He glanced at Khidr, who had already begun walking away. Without a word, Musa silently followed him, heading out of the village. As they reached the outskirts of the village, Khidr suddenly stopped, his gaze fixed on a crumbling wall at the edge of the village. The wall had bent and looked as though it could collapse at any moment. Khidr rolled up his sleeves and, without saying a word, began to repair it. Musa watched in surprise as Khidr laboured to fix the wall. His movements were methodical and precise, as though this task held some great significance. But what puzzled Musa was the fact that Khidr was helping the very villagers who had shown them nothing but rudeness and hostility. Yet here was Khidr working hard to mend their wall. Musa's mind raced with confusion. He had promised not to ask questions, but the situation seemed so illogical that he couldn't help but speak. However, instead of posing it as a direct question, he offered what seemed like a reasonable suggestion. "If you had wanted," Musa said carefully, "you could have asked them to pay you for fixing this wall. Perhaps they could have at least given us some food in return for your effort." Khidr stopped his work. He stood up slowly and turned to face Musa. His expression was calm, but his words carried a deep weight. "Musa, this is where you and I must part ways. We can no longer continue together." Even though Musa had not directly questioned him, the suggestion implied dissatisfaction with Khidr's actions, and that was enough to mark the end of their journey together. Khidr continued, You have already questioned me twice, and this is the third. But before I leave you, I will explain the reasons behind the things you could not understand." Khidr began to explain. "As for the boat," he said, referring to the first incident on their journey, "it belonged to a poor fisherman who earned his livelihood from it. There was a tyrant king nearby who seized every boat by force. I made a hole in the boat so that it would appear defective, and the king would leave it, sparing the fisherman from losing his means of livelihood." Musa nodded, understanding now why Khidr had damaged the boat in such an unexpected way. Khidr continued, "And as for the young boy we encountered, his future would have been one of disobedience and harm to his righteous parents. By Allah's command, he took his life so that they might be granted a better child, one who would bring them happiness and not lead them astray. What had seemed cruel or unjust in the moment was in fact a mercy from Allah, protecting the boy's parents from future sorrow." Finally, Khidr spoke about the wall in the village. "And as for this wall," he said, gesturing to the structure he had just repaired, "it belongs to 2 orphan boys in this village. Beneath it is a treasure that their father, a righteous man, buried for them. If the wall had collapsed, the treasure would have been exposed, and the villagers who refused to even feed us would have taken it. By repairing the wall, I ensured that when the boys grew older, they will find the treasure and benefit from their father's legacy." Musa stood in silence, absorbing the profound lessons Khidr had revealed. The wisdom of Allah encompassed all things, even those that seemed incomprehensible in the moment. Khidr, having fulfilled his task, left Musa to continue his own path. And Musa, humbled and enlightened, returned to his people with a deeper understanding of the wisdom of Allah and the vastness of his knowledge. Many years after the incident with Khidr, Allah revealed to Musa that the 40 years of wandering were nearly over. The time was fast approaching when the children of Israel would be allowed to enter the Holy Land of Jerusalem, a place promised to them long ago. However, Musa, the prophet who had guided his people through years of countless trials, would not be among them when they set foot there. Upon hearing this, Musa's heart was heavy. He turned to his Lord in deep prayer and asked, "O Allah, how may I draw closer to you? What can I do to attain your closeness?" Allah responded, instructing him to bring his brother Harun with him to the sacred mountain where they were to worship together. Musa informed his brother of the command, and together they journeyed to the mountain. Upon reaching the appointed place, Musa and Harun began their worship. As the sun cast golden rays across the land, a sense of peace and closeness to Allah enveloped them. While engaged in their devotion, Harun, beloved by Musa and the people, was taken by Allah. His soul was gently lifted and his body was left lifeless on the mountain. The loss was sudden and Musa's heart was filled with sorrow, but he knew that this too was Allah's decree. With great love, Musa carried out the burial of his brother, alone on the mountain. He dug the grave with his own hands. He placed Harun in his final resting place, speaking words of remembrance and prayer, his voice trembling with both grief and gratitude for the years they had spent together serving Allah. When Musa returned to his people, they were grieved to learn of Harun's passing. The children of Israel mourned the loss of their noble leader, but Musa reassured them, reminding them that Allah is ever watchful and that all souls belong to Him. After decades of leading His people, guiding them through trials and carrying the message of Allah, the moment finally approached for Musa to leave this world. Allah sent the angel of death to take his soul, as is the fate of every human being. When the angel arrived, he approached Musa and said, "I am here to take your soul." Startled by the sudden news from a stranger, Musa reacted instinctively and struck the angel across the face. In some narrations, it is said that the force of the strike caused the angel's eye to pop out. Stunned, the angel of death returned to Allah and said, "O my Lord, you have sent me to a servant who does not want to return to you." Allah in His infinite wisdom and mercy instructed the angel to return to Musa, but with an additional message. This time, the angel was to offer Musa a choice. Allah said to the angel, "Go back to Musa and give him this option. If he wishes to extend his life, tell him to find a bull and place his hand upon its back. The number of hairs that his hand touches will be the number of years he will live on the earth." The angel returned to Musa and conveyed Allah's message. Upon seeing the stranger again and hearing his message, Musa realized that the person before him was indeed the angel of death. Musa then asked, "What would happen after all those years?" The angel replied, "After that time, you would face death, just as everyone must." Musa knew that no matter how many years were added to his life, death would eventually come. He was not afraid of meeting his Lord. In fact, he had always longed for closeness to Allah. Musa, filled with faith and readiness, said to the angel, "If that is the case, then I am ready to meet my Lord now." After saying that, Musa asked Allah to take his soul as close as possible to the promised land and not in this barren desert. It is said that Musa was brought to a spot a stone throws away from the sacred land. From there, he could see it in the distance, fulfilling his final wish. It was at this place, so near to the land he had struggled towards for so many years, that the angel of death gently took Musa's soul. The children of Israel would eventually enter the promised land under the leadership of Joshua, Musa's faithful successor. Yet the memory of Musa, his trials, his perseverance, and his steadfast faith would live on for generations to come. Musa's resting place is said to be near Jerusalem, though its exact location remains unknown. Allah concealed it, perhaps as a reminder that Musa's legacy was not tied to any physical place, but to the message of faith, justice, and patience that he embodied throughout his life.